Good afternoon. Thank you for joining CSE Tech Tuesdays. A quick thank you to James Black and Barrington Miller for making today happen, and to everyone online for joining us live today, as with every Tuesday, starting 15 minutes after market close, with this season running until just before May long weekend. Note our disclaimer. These presentations are for information only and are not a solicitation to make an investment in either shares or debt or to buy or sell stock. CSE and Mark Francis, as session host, make no representation about any of these companies, and if you are interested in the investor pitch, please connect with the companies directly in order to get more detailed information. Normally, private companies are nominated by a range of angel groups, venture funds, incubators, investment dealers, CPA and legal firms, etc. Today we have a special session sponsored by Valhalla Angels of Edmonton, Calgary, Kelowna, Vancouver, and Saskatchewan. Over the last 10 years, Valhalla Angels, previously Venture Alberta, of which I am a proud member, has invested in a couple of hundred startups and early stage companies and helped hundreds more. Our objective in running Tech Tuesdays is twofold. First, to give technology companies with increasing traction an opportunity to gain relevant visibility. And second, to help capital markets players by introducing interesting companies, focusing on whether the technology will have commercial traction and why, and also providing new knowledge of what is happening generally across the innovation space. For you as attendees, we do ask that you share ideas and feedback with our presenters, leads, possibly funding after due diligence, referral of someone with unique applicable expertise, or maybe even a potential strategic relationship. With respect, we might refrain from giving management advice unless we are truly experts in the company's particular field. And please don't treat our presenting companies as marketing targets for services. The question feature may be utilized to ask questions. Please be clear as to whom your question is being addressed, and our Q&A moderator today, Rod Brown, will try to get to them. Each company will have a 7-minute presentation with their PowerPoint. When you see my face click on and off in the video feed, the company has 15 seconds to wrap up. After all companies have presented, we will move to Q&A. Today we have as presenters Jason Tate, COO, Bridgewater Labs, Brett Colvin, CEO, Goodlawyer, and Ian Cunningham, CEO, Wave9, all nominated by Valhalla Angels. Let's start with Jason Tate. Jason has cross-discipline technology expertise from software development to data center design. His management expertise includes enterprise business development initiatives and administrative functions in multiple countries. He was managing director at Robots and Pencils, lead for Apple's enterprise business in Western Canada, and at Longview Systems focused on international expansion, developing an award-winning managed services offering. Jason, all yours.
Thanks very much, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to chat with you today. Like Mark just said, pardon me, I am the COO of Bridgewater Labs today. Specifically, though, I want to talk to you about an enterprise product that we've been developing called Field, FLD. You can find it at fld.work. That is fld.work. Field was a product that we stood up and generated together as a team because we wanted to really address the problem that we saw in the field workspace, and specifically the digitization of products within the field workspace. We saw a lack of engagement and a lack of understanding of what people were doing out in the workspace in distributed work environments, whether that be in Left Rubber Boot, Saskatchewan, or Northern Alberta, or right here in Calgary, just not centralized in an office. The idea and the goal was to make their lives easier and to make sure that while we were doing it, we could also make their lives safer. So as a team, we got together and started to really evaluate on what we could do to make a product that would solve this need. I'm sure it's no surprise to anybody on this call, the economic cost of unintentional injuries that we see in Canada is somewhere around the neighborhood of $27 billion per year. The direct costs of such unintended injuries is about $16 billion per year. if we can eke out 10% from each organization and have them save monies based on this, it should be a self-funding enterprise for organizations to take a look at how they're doing field safety, field management, and field workforce distribution. We studied the problem at great length and in great depth. And when we were doing it, we wanted to make sure that we were developing a product that was as close to native look and feel that you would expect any mobile application to be. Specifically, running on an iOS tablet that you see here on your screen, it looks, feels, and operates just the same as it would an application that was delivered from Apple itself. We wanted to use all of the native functionality, all of the native screen elements. That way, the people that are using this application feel very, very comfortable with it. The next phase, after we took a look at that user journey, was to understand how to build these types of forms, these types of elements, and create a custom business application in real time. So we created a web interface that allows you to drag and drop components, the exact components that you would see in an iOS form, drag them onto a template, and create them in a web browser in real time, hit publish, and Bob's your uncle. You'd be able to access these forms, these business processes, and potentially any other documents that you wanted to serve up to your field employees in real time. We also wanted to make sure that there was insight, that there was data that we were able to capture and show as people started to use these different types of documents, and that the business could actually translate that into something very insightful. We were starting to do our discovery of this, and we were doing some user acceptance testing when we uncovered that it wasn't just the reduction in user injury. It wasn't just the reduction in improved quality of work and work delivery. We actually saw second order and third order consequences in the ability to understand where there are educational gaps in specific businesses and to address those in real time as well. When somebody opens a document or when somebody visits the same area on a field form at any given time, we're able to track how long the user spends on that, and we're able to then provide that insight back to the organization so that they can take meaningful action and corrective action, whether that is employee education or a complete rework of a physical process. So again, like I said before, the goal is to reduce the number of injuries, reduce all of the primary care and hospitalization, as well as, look at that stat, 104 million production days of work were lost. And that's just here in Canada alone in the last 12 months. Now, of course, that's a 2017 study. 2020 might be a little bit different considering we were all stuck at home and the only thing we got was maybe a stub toe. Again, it's not just about reducing those incidents. It's also about making sure that employees have the opportunity to use apps to speed up their employment and their work. So I think that that's about a wrap for me. I want to, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for the conversation. Hope that we can chat, talk about how field can transform your business, how we can take a small, routine field or distributed workforce and share a cost-effective, transparent way to execute going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. You were certainly concise and precise with your presentation. Thank you. Now we have Brett Colvin. Brett was a corporate lawyer who experienced firsthand that most business owners couldn't afford the legal help they need. So he quit the big firm and got to work on building something better, something for everyone. Brett, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. It sounded good coming from your voice. Thanks, everybody, for having me today. My name is Brett, as Mark said. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of a company called Goodlawyer, based here in Calgary. And as Mark said, I practiced corporate law at one of the big shops in town for about 4 or 5 years, and just got to the point where I'd had enough. I'd had enough of sending out the big expensive bills, getting pushback from the clients, just chasing billable hours. It just didn't make sense to me. So a couple years ago, I quit the job and joined forces with a designer and developer and started there. We built our MVP, and happy to say now that we're getting close to 20 employees. We're growing like crazy. This past year has been a roller coaster ride, to say the least. And for the Valhalla folks, this isn't so different than skip the dishes. We're just allowing access to a slightly more expensive service, being business lawyers. So our entire focus is on supporting Canadian entrepreneurs right across the country. And we do that by providing the bridge between them and these independent and entrepreneurial lawyers themselves. We're able to offer fantastic professional legal help, whether it's drafting contracts, quick questions, but at a fraction of the cost, because they don't have virtually any overhead. And their biggest struggle is finding entrepreneurs to help, which is what we do for them. So with that, I'm going to be even more concise, Mark. I've got a very quick presentation to share. And really, for me, the last slide is going to end with the promo code. And for me, the best thing to come out of this is for some of the folks on the call today to give Goodlawyer a try and just take it for a spin and see for yourself how different hiring a lawyer through Goodlawyer in 2021 can feel. So really, at our core, Goodlawyer is at great prices. That's what we're all about. We don't believe in billable hours, and lawyers aren't allowed to sell them over the platform. So Mark already gave me the beautiful intro, so we can just skip that and get straight to the promo code. Tech free. So anyone that if you have a legal question burning, goodlawyer.ca, check us out. We've got a pricing page of all our services, but this promo code will get you sort of our sampler, which is the $39 advice session, totally free. So goodlawyer.ca, promo code can be used at checkout, and really encourage anyone with a niggling legal question to give us a spin. And just coming back here. That's all I got, Mark.
Okay, well, thank you. You were certainly prompt and concise. Thank you, Brett. And taking us home, Ian Cunningham, who has lived much of his life in southeast Saskatchewan, Canada's oil industry. During his early career, Ian designed radio control systems at Morandi in Calgary, managed projects in software development, and then wireless technology strategy at SaskTel. He explored ways to apply wireless technology and IoT within oil and gas, completed an MBA, and gained experience in asset management and innovation strategy as big data and AI were just starting to impact industrial processes. Ian?
Thank you, Mark. Just pulling the PDF up here. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mark, and Valhalla, as well as CSE, for the opportunity to share some information about Wave9 today. Wave9 offers oil producers a solution which reduces their production cost while also improving their environmental responsibility. We began our journey back in 2018, went out and talked with production managers, operators, and production engineers about the core challenges to the production process. And what we heard basically from everyone was that there was a lot of financial pressure around commodity pricing. They wanted to reduce their production costs, but that they needed to do that in a way that also continued or improved their existing environmental footprint and reduce their impacts. But standing in the way of that was the fact that a lot of companies use a daily manual inspection process, and this just isn't scalable. So what this really looks like is an operator may hop in a truck and drive around to 50 or 60 different well sites over the course of the day. They don't know what they're going to find. They don't know what they're going into. There might be hazards at that site. They also, if they do find something is not running or that there's a spill, they may not have the equipment necessary with them at that moment to take action, and then they have to go back, collect it, and bring it back out to the site. So we really want to facilitate the shift from that type of operating process towards one where the production managers, operators, and everyone in the field has a virtual presence across all of the well sites under management. They know what's happening 24/7. When an incident does occur, whether it's operational or environmental, they're directed specifically to that site, and they have all of the information at their fingertips to be able to take action immediately in a safe way. So in order to do that, we need to collect information from the sites, whether that be from existing SCADA and control systems or our own technology that's installed at the site to collect sensor data like power, pressure, flows, etc., as well as a photo that's taken of the wellhead area so that we can bring this information back into Wave9's cloud, analyze all the sensor data, and put the photos through an AI engine in order to identify contamination. Once that's done, we produce a dashboard that's used by the operator to direct their workflow specifically to the sites that they need to pay attention to. We essentially pull out all of the excess information, the working as intended, and move that away and get them focused on the stuff that matters. They can dig into that through the application for as much additional information as they need. So you can see here on the right where there's a photo and some additional sensor data that's available as they look into it. And so the benefits that a producer sees off that are they have up to 90% faster response time to an incident. Within an hour, they know something's happening, and within an hour, somebody can be going out to that site and dealing with it, as opposed to potentially finding out about a leak that's already been ongoing for most of a day or has already progressed into a full blowout. They're also 7 times more productive. We've seen our lead customer now move from daily site visits to weekly site visits with their operators, and that means those folks can spend most of their other time on real value producing activities, and you just don't need the same level of staff to manage that field. And when people are out on site, there's a lot less time exposed to hazardous environments. So many of these well sites have poison gas potentially at the site and things like that. You want to limit that. Our team is composed of people with backgrounds in wireless and business innovation strategy, cloud architecture, AI, and machine learning, as well as SCADA and control system design. And the general market size for this specific process in Canada, there's about 90,000 well sites. In North America, we've got about 10 times that as you add in the US. And then there's other verticals as well. Things like lithium production and geothermal use exactly the same production architecture as oil and gas. And then you can also take it to environmental monitoring and other areas, or things like power demand management for commercial and industrial applications. The business model essentially is we sell transaction of the hardware at day one. We're profitable right from then, and from then on, it's a SaaS model that we operate on, where every site is paying us a fee for being under management. It's a very long retention rates and low churn, because this is really embedded directly into the operations process that people are using. So in 2018, we did our initial customer discovery prototype development. We detected our first leak with AI early in 2019. That led to a commercial assessment by our lead customer later that year, where they shifted operators to a 3-day cycle. And they've since finished their economic assessment and made a follow-up order for 121 units that are just being deployed now. And they're shifting operators on those wells now to a weekly schedule rather than a daily inspection. So all good success and proving out in the field. We also see some competition both from computer vision solutions as well as incumbent remote monitoring platforms, but typically the computer vision solutions are surveillance or safety related, not so much environmental. So we have a very particular focus on the environmental there that not a lot of others do. And then traditional SCADA control systems generally generate a lot of data from a lot of different systems. So this slide, I'm showing that often a producer has a lot of people looking at a lot of screens and a lot of data, filtering through it and analyzing it in the back office, and then making decisions. But Wave9's philosophy is to take all of that, analyze the data for the producer, and then produce an actionable outcome to the field personnel directly, so that we drive the work that's happening without significant change happening to those people's jobs, without significant impact or shifting of data on the back end. And this side has a lot of information. I can go through it later with someone if they're interested in following up with me. The really key points are that it's sort of a multi-pronged approach. We provide the app to the field personnel. Engineers in the back office get access to data from day one on the installation, and production managers have field-wide visibility. And you can see an example here of what the AI can detect. So there's some leak detection going on in the second photo there. We're now moving into our scale-up, beginning some scale-up and business development additions in Calgary and Houston. So we're hoping to work on funding that over the year. And we're also interested in connecting with people who might have access to pilots or want other information, just have a discussion about this type of technology. So thanks again for the opportunity to share Wave9.
Thank you very much, Ian. And now we are going to turn this over to our question moderator and Valhalla Angels champion for today's Tech Tuesday, a friend, a co-investor, Rod Brown, dad, ski bum, investor, and entrepreneur active in the startup venture space for over 25 years. Personal ventures include hospitality, internet telco, and wearable tech startups to manufacturing companies. In addition to building a strong family portfolio, Rod has 9 personal startups behind him, with some meaningful exits, and here's some honesty, some fantastic blow-ups. Rod has successfully integrated this diverse experience into his current roles as managing director of Valhalla Private Capital, which is a full-cycle private capital firm, BW Ventures, which invests development and capital support to tech-driven companies, and also as an active angel investor, which includes sitting on the boards of several companies. Rod, thank you for joining us today, for making today happen, and it's all over to you.
Wow, thanks, Mark. And thanks, everybody. Great presentations. Didn't expect the diversity that you would all show up with today for such a short presentation, so thank you. And I'm gonna hound you first for a question that's going to go to everyone. Perhaps we'll start with the last presenter and work our way back to the first presenter. The question that I'm curious about is, how's your company seen today in the marketplace? Is it a disruptor level technology, or is it more of a value add style technology? Ian?
I'd say there's components of both there, Rod. We're sort of seated in a set of technologies that are somewhat familiar to the industry, but the application of AI specifically to these processes and the use of very simple to use UI to actually drive workflow, I think that's a disruption. We haven't seen other people effectively utilize that in this application.
Great, thank you. Takes us to Brett.
Yeah, I'd have to say most definitely a disruptor in the very traditional and somewhat archaic legal services market. Really, we're taking a new approach to how lawyers and business owners interact that, frankly, I've never seen before. Some of the ways in which we do it will be familiar. You know, telehealth is blowing up right now, and consumers and business owners are getting more comfortable with purchasing services, not just products online. So that trend we're fitting into. But when it comes to legal services, Goodlawyer really is disrupting how lawyers sell their services and how they interact and connect with clients. So as I mentioned briefly on my chat, we don't allow billable hours to be sold over the platform. So fundamentally, we are pricing and offering services in a way that the vast majority of traditional law firms refuse to do.
Great, thanks, Brett. Jason, please.
Yeah, I think that we're kind of situated, the same as Ian, where we're doing some value add things, but we're also doing a lot of other things that are disruptive in that we can connect to all of the existing back end systems, whether you're using a tool for asset management or you're using a great tool for AI and machine learning to discover leaks and wellhead issues, we're able to put those all together and provide real-time data and updates to those NT people from a safety and a work process specifically position. So it's kind of a little bit of both for us.
Great. Thanks, Jason. I'm going to keep you on the hook here, and then I'm going to work my way backward now. Is there a need with Field to have a significant amount of custom integrations, or is it pretty much out of the box and you can start using your tools immediately?
Yeah, a little bit of both. It depends on the organization and it depends on the actual needs of the community that is going to be using the product. We have a standalone model that operates in our SaaS cloud, and it's a cost per user per month. It's very easy to do. But some, like I just mentioned a couple of moments ago, need to integrate into Maximo. Some of us need to integrate into Wave9's data and pull some of those data sets out. Some of us may need to connect to learning management systems and different organizations like that. So we can pull all of those types of things into the application and then serve it up depending on what the customer's needs are specifically.
So is that kind of where you see the blend of sort of disruptive and value add? Is that
right there? Because most of those other systems kind of, a lot of people will use Maximo to try to do multiple things that it was never intended to do. The same thing goes for other ERPs and CRMs, and the mobile experience isn't great. And I think that Ian's example kind of showed the same thing, where you actually need a specific purpose-driven application to bring those together, but it must take the user community into consideration and not just try to put a face on a ugly back-end system that's been around for a long time.
Great, thank you. Brett, so as a disruptor, how do you have your platform, or do you have any systems in place to help manage the client legal relationships, particularly as it relates to the quality of service or the assurance that somebody is receiving what hopefully they're paying for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we take a lot of control when it comes to pricing, and we do facilitate custom jobs, but those have to get brokered through Goodlawyer. And then we have a fixed fee menu of a ton of services. So it really starts at price and scope. Every lawyer in the platform has been vetted by me. Bringing on a chief legal officer who I used to work with at BLG, and they'll all be running through him in the future. So we do vet intensively all the lawyers coming on, and then clients always have the ability to leave a review, not so different than on Airbnb. So if there are any lawyers, I mean, we haven't run into any terrible actors, but there are some lawyers that haven't really met the service standard, and those are reflected in the reviews or in feedback that we get from clients, because we're calling every single client that comes through the platform to get that feedback and iterate quickly. So there's always a chance that a lawyer could, provide a substandard service, but we've got a lot of checks and balances that, for us, our NPS last month was 88. And I can guarantee you that your average law firm is probably in the 20-30s. So it's just a completely new experience that, I'm sure you've hired a few lawyers in your day, Rod. And I think if you take Goodlawyer for a spin, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. From a technology perspective, it's interesting. You said that every lawyer is vetted by yourself. So that kind of begs the question on how does that impact scalability?
Do things that don't scale in the early days, right? So like I said, I'm already offloading that with one of, a guy taking a 75% haircut on salary to come join the Goodlawyer rocket ship. And so that's just the first move to spread that out. Vetting lawyers is always going to be a huge priority for us. And unlike, a global marketplace like Fiverr or even an Uber, lawyers are able to provide services to a huge number of clients. And so my point there is we add lawyers incrementally, and we've got a waiting list of lawyers trying to get on, usually take referrals from other lawyers on the platform. But one lawyer can service so many clients that we've been able to add incrementally as demand has taken off, and it hasn't really been an issue. Like, that's definitely not a bottleneck for us right now in terms of me vetting the lawyers to bring on the platform. But we'll continue to scale out that lawyer side of the team as the need dictates. So,
awesome, thank you. All right, so now Ian, you had mentioned that you're sort of a blend as well between disruptor and value add. So my question there is, in terms of your hardware components, is that where your value add comes from, or is that the disruptor side? So more specifically, are you making your own hardware, or are you really software driven is probably the crux of it?
Well, I'd say we're software driven. We do manufacture and design our own hardware, and we do that out of a necessity. There's if you look at traditional SCADA in the oil and gas industry, it's very expensive, and the architecture for how it goes together and everything increases the fundamental cost of getting that data up. And having a very low cost solution at the wellhead is a critical component of doing this on a wide scale. But we also need to have that information coming into our system in a way that we can get everything that we need, right? So we're open in the sense that we can work with other systems. We can collect data that's coming in from another system, process it, and turn it around. So we don't necessarily disrupt a working in place operational technology system. Or we could have a lot of situations that we're dealing with are completely greenfield, where there's absolutely no communication whatsoever of any sensors off that site. So we have to be able to go in and put in everything that we need in order to get the information back to process. When I say the blend of value add and everything, I think the important point there for us is that we need to use systems that are trusted and understood with the industry. So we have to make sure that we're not making a leap change or causing massive internal change management. So we pay a lot of attention to minimizing the change management that a client would have to go through to implement the technology. But then on the application software side, we can make big strides because it's not as impactful on the operation. So by introducing AI into the process, by taking some other approaches to the way that the data is presented to the end user, I think that makes a massive change in terms of the overall workflow that person has. That doesn't require any real change to their actual day-to-day job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. You said a couple things there in terms of change management, and I'm assuming it's fairly specific when you reference that to well management. Do you flow into other industries fairly well, and is there sort of a learning curve that your organization needs to go through before getting into those industries?
Yeah, there would be a learning curve, and when we've thought about that, we're looking at the ones that are most similar to oil and gas. So we're very focused on this, as you said, very specific workflow, and by doing that, we understand it really well, and we can automate as much of it as possible. Right. The two that I mentioned, lithium extraction and geothermal, we've had conversations with companies that are working on that. On either old well sites or new drills that are very similar in terms of their need to have an environmental inspection done on a periodic basis. And when you look at the type of sensory information that's coming back and what the person in that role is doing, it's almost identical for those types of industries. There are others that are much different. For instance, we have had a conversation with a company that was looking to do power demand management in a commercial space. So this wasn't even remote monitoring. It was just bringing back instrumentation and then making smart decisions about how particular power was used on different circuits in their equipment, right? And how can they get a handle on how to do that more efficiently, and can they identify issues in their hardware and that kind of thing, right? That's different, but the same base hardware platform can be used. And yeah, in that case, there would be some substantial learning that would be required to understand their specific use case and what's needed in terms of the output from the software. But when you look at industries where you have a pump jack or a well drilled in the ground and you're extracting something and somebody needs to go and check that site, we pretty much can cover that with very little change today.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian. So I'm going to run back maybe to a question for everybody again. The question is, is maybe a little different for each of you, but specifically, maybe you could speak to some early traction or Maven type clients that really represent your ideal customer, and if you could briefly touch on why they maybe signed or what the value was that they saw in your product or service that made them that ideal type client. Jason, if you want to kick off.
Sure, absolutely. We saw our first traction outside of the energy industry, which I'll let Ian talk about, was also in power generation and transmission. So power line technicians that are out doing a bunch of field work and running up and down those specific poles and doing maintenance work, whether that be underground in a generation station or up a pole, like I said, we were able to save and find them a lot of money there. We're also seeing a huge uptick now, and we're starting to recognize that in commercial real estate and commercial property management, there's a bunch of business process and activity that can be solved very, very quickly without needs to pull people in and have them sit in classrooms and learn how to fix specific various types of infrastructure and equipment. So we kind of spread across, but again, oil and gas was first, energy and transmission was second, and now we're starting to see it in the commercial real estate space. Pardon me.
Excellent. And was there a specific client that really saw your value first, if you're able to say, or? Yeah,
I don't have permission to say, but I can talk about an energy company, or pardon me, an electricity company that unfortunately had a power line technician that was killed. When they did the investigation, they recognized very quickly that it was a result of having improper documentation when they were doing their safety audits, and procedures weren't followed. And so it was very quickly, we were able to digitize everything that they were doing and put it onto an iPad for them. The best part about that is the unintended second and third order consequences that I mentioned when we were having our conversation earlier and I was doing my presentation, in the amount of 3-ring binders we were able to eliminate from the back of crew cab pickup trucks, the amount of insurance cost savings that we were able to apply and feed back to that organization as well, because they could actually now prove to their organization that they, were taking all of the necessary steps to make sure that their people were safe. And then there's an environmental and a green impact, because they weren't filling up the back seats of these crew cabs. And, when 4 people went to a job, they didn't have to send 2 trucks now. They only had to send 1 truck. It made a whole bunch of difference there. And then just countless pieces of paper that ended up being wasted as well.
Excellent, thanks. Now, Brett, same question for you. And if there was I guess I'm also interested to hear if there's a large firm that signed up with you. Again, if you're not able to say the name, that's okay. But if there was, I'm interested to see how that might have impacted your business.
We've been approached by a number of the big shops. But frankly, Goodlawyer and the big shops just don't blend very nicely. They really are at sort of opposite ends of the spectrum, as much as some of the big shops try to squeeze in with some of these, temporary startup packages. But for us, it's really been more of a journey of the little guy. And we started when we launched the platform in 2019, doing a bunch of different things: business, real estate, family, wills and estates. And really what we found over the next year was it was the entrepreneurs that were getting the most value out of our product, where they were having this wow experience because, drafting contracts and sharing those and getting quick advice from lawyers is right up their alley, and something that's really expensive or hard to get today. So we've just doubled down more and more on this focus on the entrepreneur. And within that, now we're trying to isolate, what segments of entrepreneurs are we particularly good at helping? And for us, that right now looks like startups and consultants. And every day there seems to be a few more investors coming our way too, because they're looking to save a few bucks on their.
Great. So would you say your Maven client is a service user or service provider? I
would say it's the client, the startup. That would be, if I'm not sure I've heard that term before, to be honest with you, but what I'm implying it to mean, our sort of North Star customer is the startup. Really, for us, I mean, we service lawyers for sure, but they're more of partners. They facilitate it, they make it happen, but it's all in service of the startup, the entrepreneur.
No, that's great. Thank you. And do you have any skip the dishes type startups with?
Oh yeah, we got a few hopping, and our growth rate's not so far.
Oh, that's excellent. Thanks. All right, Ian.
So in terms of our early traction, what we found, I guess, is that the ideal customers for us to approach are producing somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 well sites. If they're any smaller, there's a little bit of like a, I'm going to wait and see what the other guys do type of vision. And then if they're any bigger, then you get into ones where there's a lot of internal gatekeeping in terms of getting the technology in play, or they might have a lot of internal systems where the integration becomes a bit more difficult. But that 2,000 to 5,000 is a sweet spot because we can overlay onto those systems very easily and start getting traction early. What we've heard as to why choose Wave9. So our lead customer assessed us against other competitors in the industry, some of which are very well known, and they went with us on a few criteria. So they wanted to reduce site visits, they wanted to reduce kilometers driven, and they wanted to manage their environmental risk. And what they saw with Wave9 was we could do that in a way that didn't require their operators to look at hundreds and hundreds of photos a day. I think that was probably key. With the other systems, there's just no way to not drive out to that well site or have somebody sitting there going through photo after photo after photo that all just are fine, right? And what they saw was we have detected leaks. We have reduced their process to a weekly schedule rather than daily. So you got a lot less man hours and a lot less kilometers going into that driving back and forth, right? And they recently brought a bunch of wells back online. That's what the latest deployment was. And when they did that, I think that they said it's about half the number of operators that they needed to bring back on staff to manage those well sites. So there's a direct benefit in all of those respects. Now they signed an LOI with us when we went out to talk with them originally, where they said they were targeting technology on at least 1,000 well sites over the next 5 years or so. We're through 140 of those now, and we expect it to continue. There's a meeting that I have with them coming up tomorrow where we'll discuss how, what the next steps would be to scale this to other fields where there's, a lot more wells at play. So I think, we've seen really good traction with that. I can't share the name of that customer. We've asked a little bit about that, but they're very careful about, that kind of information. So.
Sure. Is it Permian type of focus, or is it more north?
They operate in southeast Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and
Okay.
it's typically light oil production, not what you would find in northern Alberta. Similar to everything else in southeast Saskatchewan.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm going to keep you on the hook here with one more short question, as we're getting conscious on time, so everybody's going to have to be real brief on these ones. In terms of the product that you have, does that translate into renewables? And is there a real easy ROI on this?
Well, the power from Wave9's standpoint, the power demand monitoring and generation, that side of things, it definitely translates. Geothermal, for instance, is one non-fossil fuel-based energy source that we've had conversations with companies that are looking at that. So I think there's a direct translation in some aspects to what we're doing. And then, sorry, Rob, what was the second piece of the question there?
Is there a real clear ROI for?
Yeah, it's absolutely clear. We, on Wave9's website, there's actually an ROI calculator that somebody can go in and generate a projection on. I'd welcome people to contact us for more elaborate back-end calculation spreadsheets and everything. But yeah, within the payback on the first deployment here was within 7 months. And once you've got the initial transaction down, this customer, three operators, that's $300,000 a year that they saved, and the cost to them on that 150 sites is about $7,500 a month. So there's close to a little over 300% ROI on a go-forward basis annually for them.
Great, thank you. And Brett, quickly, the business model that you're running, how does Goodlawyer make money?
We take a 20% clip on everything that gets transacted over the marketplace. And then we've just rolled out our first ever subscription service called Goodlawyer Pro that we make a little more margin on and gives our power users unlimited access to legal advice when they need it.
Sorry, thank you. That was really quick. Jason, quickly, last one is I want to ask you the same question. The ROI on your target customers, is it clearly identifiable?
Yeah, and we're seeing the same kind of numbers that Ian just mentioned, although it can be a considerably higher when you start to take in all of those other second and third order consequences. But really, right off the hop, we're seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 300% reduction in actual man hours, which is crazy to actually say when you start to think about that. Pardon me. And you can also see that extend well beyond.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. Hopefully the audience found some of those questions insightful. I think what each of your organizations doing is fascinating and impactful. So definitely appreciate the effort that you put into building these. But more importantly, thank you again for the time that you put into today's session.
No, and thank you for those that didn't join in the beginning. My name is Barrington Miller, Director of Issuer Engagement. And I just want to say thank you to our presenters, Jason Tate, Bridgewater Labs, Brett Colvin, Goodlawyer, and Ian Cunningham, Wave9. That is Wave with the number 9. May you have continued success in expanding and advancing your businesses. And thank you to Valhalla Angels. Rod Brown, thank you so much for bringing us interesting companies and making today's session happen. And may you and Mark both have successes in your investing. While I have our audience's ear and eyes, Rod knows his stuff. He understands these companies. In part of your due diligence, reflect on the questions that he's asking, and equally important, the types of questions he asked. It was really, really good. Thank you to our attendees for your time today. Go to the company's websites and learn more about these companies. Again, I can't stress enough, do your due diligence. If you have a lead for them, connect with them. And on a self-plugging note for the CSE, please make sure you visit www.thecse.com. Visit our YouTube channel. As I put in the chat, today's session was live streamed, first ever Tech Tuesday event as well. And this will be available immediately after. So if you missed the beginning portion, just go to YouTube and it should be there. We're also available on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Come back next week for CSE's Tech Tuesdays, where we will hopefully be discussing oil and gas environmental reclamation. And of course, thank you to Mr. Mark Francis, James Black, and everyone who is participating in making these events possible. And with that, we will see you next week.